really what the challenge was that we had was the revenue shortfalls that came up. Not this last budget year, but the one before, we had a $3.2 million shortfall for the Office of the Sheriff. Now, the Sheriff's Office receives its funding from two places primarily, city and the state government. And it's about a 60-40 split. City government gives us about 60%, give or take, and state government gives us about 40% to run the Office of the Sheriff. And so what we had when we were confronted with these shortfalls was we had to make up these shortfalls, and we didn't want to ask for any more money. We didn't want to ask for any more taxpayer money if we could do it. That's what we were up to. And we also wanted to assist the city because they had revenue shortfalls in trying to meet their obligations to you too in any way that we can. One of the things that you may remember is we took $1 million out of our special revenue fund, our surplus account. Monies, still public monies, but monies that we did not spend, we gave it to the city to help them balance their budget. But I really want to let you know before we get started, the only reason this all works is because of the great staff we have there. We have a bunch of great deputies that work there every day protecting you. And you probably don't see a lot of the work they do because unlike our brothers on the police department, they're not out here in the public as much. You see them occasionally in courts and things like that, but you don't really see them in their day-to-day activities, which is why I would encourage you next month to come when we have our meeting at the jail, because you'll see a lot of our deputies doing what they do. And they work very hard. We are about 19 deputies short of our authorized strength. We always have, like everyone, we have trouble recruiting people, recruiting the right people. And in addition to that, we've had some budget cuts that took away some of the staff. And in addition to that, even before all that happened, by the station assessment, we were 34 deputies short that they never fund. So our goal was to increase revenues and decrease cost, help the city in meeting the budget shortfall. And the overall goal, we want to make all our operations, not just jail operations, as light on the back of the taxpayer as we possibly could without compromising safety and security. Because the safety and the security and the protection of you is the overriding goal. That's the whole reason we exist. So we didn't ever wanted to take a chance that compromises you, but still wanted to obtain these goals. So the first thing we looked at is how to increase revenues. And this is something a little unique to the Sheriff's Office, but it can happen in other parts of city government. We're a special revenue fund. We're not a general revenue fund. And that means that we can make money. We're also authorized by the state to do things that make money. And one of the things we can do is operate a commissary, which is we sell things. And if we're specifically authorized by the state that sheriffs can do that. And what we sell are things mostly to the inmates, Inmate Canteen, Care Mart, and Fresh Favorites, and I'll talk about them all in a minute. Now the first thing was the canteen. When we got over there, we took a look and we did an analysis of our canteen, and Ken let me run with this, and I was pleased about it. And what we looked at was, we had a private contractor running our canteen. We were getting about $190,000 profit out of it, which we used to run the jail. We felt we could do it better ourselves, and so we started doing it ourselves. And what we did was, we hired some part-time people to oversee it, then we got a bunch of inmates in there to help us run it, because we use a lot of inmate labor. And right now, our canteen is projected to generate about $300,000 in profit from the canteen. It's probably going to be more than that, but that's a conservative estimate on what we're doing. Now, the money from the canteen can be used for a variety of projects, but it's mostly used for things of benefit to the inmates. That's what we buy their TVs from. That's when they take the GED exam. So it's things for benefit of the inmates. But if we didn't have that money to do it, some of these things are mandated by law. That would mean we'd have to come to you with our hand out for tax money for these things. So we're funding a lot of this stuff by money we generate ourselves. And this was probably the best example I can use. Why do these revenues go up so much? One is because we really listen to what the inmates will buy. We're very nimble about that. I'll give you an example. One of our health service providers, one of our nurses, we give them a slipper, and they don't like the slipper. It's just a cheap slipper we give, like a shower slipper. None of the inmates like it. So they go up to medical and they always try to complain they have foot problems, which would get them a medical prescription for a thing that sort of looks like a Croc. It's not really one of those Crocs, but it looks like it. And of course, if they have a foot problem, they get that. Well, the nurse comes to us and says, you know, so many of them are coming up here and trying to game us into getting these things, you probably ought to sell them. So we looked at it and we said, you're right. So we went and found a version of the Croc. We put them on. We sell thousands of dollars worth of those things to the inmates now. I would say that probably 30% of the inmates have these things now that they buy and we make money on, and it saves you money. Also, medical's happy because now they're not coming up and trying to game the system and get out of that. So that gives you an example of how we were able to do that. We're very nimble now when it comes to seizing opportunities that present themselves through inmate canteen. We also looked at a new program called Caremark, and this is part of inmate canteen. What happens here is you can go online if you have a loved one in the jail. You can go online and you can buy products for your loved one and we'll deliver them to them. And what this answered was a complaint we had from a lot of people who had loved ones in the jail. They would send them money for canteen, and then they find out they'd spend all the money calling their girlfriend, who the parent really didn't like anyway, and then they want more money. Well, the parent's upset because they're like, hey, I gave him $200 and he didn't buy anything that I wanted him to buy. And we would say, well, once you give him that money, it's his. There's nothing we can do about it. If he wants to spend it all on stuff that you don't think is very important, there's nothing we can do about it. So this now says, well, you can buy the stuff for him and we'll deliver it. So if you're a little worried about what he's doing with his money, not a problem. We'll do it. And this has increased our sales into the canteen too. This is all done online, it's all done electronically, so it's really efficient in how to do. And we're constantly changing these packet items. We're always looking to see what people want. Even at Christmas time, we have the Christmas packets they could send. At Valentine's Day, we had a Valentine's Day packet. So people would buy that and they'd send it to the inmates. It has two good things for it too. One is, it lets the inmate know that their loved one still cares about them, even though they did wrong, and that helps them behave while they're in the jail, which makes it safe for my deputies, because it releases some of the tensions that they have. The other reason is, in order to get any of this stuff, you have to behave. If you don't behave, you can't have it. And they want this. So it moderates behavior. It makes it safer for my deputies who have to work with them. So it has a lot of, it's not just about the money, it has a lot of other benefits to it. And the last thing that we did was a thing called Fresh Favors. And this was, once a week, if they're good, an inmate can buy a nice meal from the staff kitchen. And we charge them restaurant prices, $8.99, $9.99, depends on what they buy. It's usually a hamburger, fries, and a Coke. Now in the jail, they never get a soda, ever. We feed them a fruit juice. So that's a big deal to them. They never get French fries, ever. So that's a big deal to them. And they never get meat that's actually meat. So that's a big deal to them. We started it in December. So far it's made over $50,000, and that includes the startup costs, because this year was going to be the least profitable. But once again, this moderates behavior. If you don't behave, you can't have this. So they want this. So one of the strategies that we started developing here was, you know, managing 1,400 inmates is all about operant learning. You know, reward, punishment. You do good, you get rewarded. You do bad, you get punished. We have punishment for them. We'll show you that in the next month. They go to an isolation cell that they stay in, and every 3 days we let them out to take a shower. If they're real bad and predatory, that's what happens to them if they're really bad. But what we started looking at is, instead of giving them stuff on your dime when they're good, why don't we let them buy things that they want when they're good on their dime? And that's what we're looking for now. Instead of you giving them stuff to make them behave, we're going to let them buy stuff that they want so they'll behave. So that's kind of developed as one of the targets that's coming out of this, is we're looking for ways to reward them by letting them buy things that they want, as opposed to you giving them things on your dime. We also got into advertising. We used to not do this, and this wasn't really ours, but we started doing it. And the biggest thing we did was the former sheriff, Paul Lantain, started video advertising in the jail. We have a rolling PowerPoint, and it has ads on it. And the people pay us $1,000 a year to have one of those ads. And who do you think will advertise to inmates? Bondsmen, lawyers, marriage counselors, people who give driving clinics for people with DUIs. So actually it's about $130,000 that we're earning out of this so far. And then topped on that, one of our deputies came to us, Deputy Lawrence, who works in intake. He goes, you know, we ought to expand that. We have to give the inmates a rule book every year that we print up at about $17,000 a year. We print it 4 times a year, costs about 17 grand to print all year. By law, we have to give the inmates a rule book. So he said, why don't you sell advertising space in the rule book? So, seemed like a good idea. We did a market analysis. We looked at magazines with a circulation like ours. How many would we hand out every year? That's the circulation. And we structured the advertising rates based on that. And then we had an auction for the pages everyone wants, inside the front page, the back page, and inside the back page. Our first printing, we generated $17,000 in revenue selling ad space. That means that we paid for the cost of printing this book for the rest of the year. You're not paying for it anymore. We made $2,000, and we've got 3 printings to go. Now, those next 3 printings, we probably won't make $17,000 a year, because the people that paid a lot of money for those front pages got a year deal. That was part of the deal we gave. But we'll probably make another $3,000 or $4,000 each time we print this book now. So not only are you not paying for it anymore, we got people willingly giving us money to pay for it, we're actually making money on it that we roll over into jail operations.